Welcome to Ask a Fascat number 22. I'm Frank Overton, and we have Ben Delaney in the podcast.
Hey everybody, how you doing? We've got a lot of great questions from you folks today, coming in via the forum, Instagram, pigeon carrier, handwritten scroll. We've got lots of great questions, and the best question today is getting a sweet Garmin Forerunner watch.
Yeah, measures sleep and HRV. Yes, among a lot of other things.
Among 60 gajillion other metrics.
A lot of features.
So we've got approximately 20 questions teed up, and we're throwing Frank a curveball with the speed round midway through. So we've got, most of the questions are longer, thoughtful questions, and Frank will give longer, thoughtful answers. And then we've got a speed round in the middle to break it up, where I'm just going to rapid fire questions off at him, see if he can deflect all these dodgeballs coming at his head.
Challenge.
So before we jump into that, let's just do a quick review of the week, which comes from Charles.
Charles says, I purchased the Winning in the Kitchen meal plan because I was having issues with unexpected weight gain and mild bonking on longer or harder rides. When I started the plan, I immediately noticed that each day's meals and snacks provide a near perfect balance of protein, healthy fats, and carbs. This balance made a difference within 1 week. I stopped gaining weight. I felt better fueled during every ride. I'm now committed to taking the next steps with the Fascat meal plans, and I look forward to seeing the effects over a longer period of time. About the meals, there are pasta people and rice people in the cycling world, and the Fascat team are rice people, which took some time getting used to. Some of the meals come out bland when cooked according to the instructions, but rice, proteins, and vegetables can all be spiced to taste with minimal effort. Interjection, this is what Jackson calls sauces and spices. He goes on to say, about the Fascat family, I really appreciated the Facebook group and the additional materials they make available via their website and YouTube channel. Buying this meal plan was a bit of a test, but I now consider myself part of the Fascat family, and I look forward to purchasing a training plan in the near future. Thank you, Charles.
Great stuff. And yes, thanks for being part of the Fascat family, and thank you, listeners, for also being part of our Fascat community and helping us make this whole thing work. And this episode is a great example of that. Lots of great questions here, so we're just going to jump straight into it now. First question comes from Thomas Klein, who says, this season has been fantastic. I went sub 11 hours and won my 30 to 39 age group at Unbound Gravel after doing the off-season weight program, 16 weeks of sweet spot, then the gravel plan. As the season is coming to an end, my wife and I keep discussing, how do we get faster next season? That's the question, right?
The existential question.
Yeah. My understanding from everything your team has mentioned is that you need a new stimulus. If we're already winning in the kitchen, completing advanced Fascat plans, doing yoga and core work, but largely have the same goals for next year of long endurance events, how do we go about getting faster? Again, yes, this is the question. This is what Fascat exists for, people. How do we go about getting faster?
Yes.
Do we need to vary the inputs to continue to grow? Or can we just simply follow the same plans because our FTPs are higher, and so that counts as a new and higher stimulus? So, big question, how do we get faster, Frank? And the nuance to it is, if we have the same goals, is following the same plan going to continue to result in gains year after year?
You must apply progression, Thomas. I think with progression, you keep going, you keep working hard, month after month, year after year, you keep training consistently. And this is where the words development and process apply. One example that I love is former Fascat athlete Sepp Kuss. For the listeners out there, he won a stage in the Tour de France last summer. And he was a Fascat athlete when he was a student at CU, collegiate athlete. And homeboy loved to ride his bike. And when you think about it, he's been loving his bike for the past 12 years or even longer, since he was just a wee lad. And a funny story, we used to prescribe 3-hour rides to him when we wanted him to ride 4, because he always rode 1 to 2 hours more. And so if we wanted him to ride 5 hours, we would say 4 on the training plan. And the funny thing is, he didn't know that we knew. But so the trick was on him. But the point is, so what Sepp has done as it relates to you, he's taken on greater and greater training loads each year. He's gone from racing collegiate mountain bike nats to domestic pro racing to world tour to grand tours, and then gone all the way along to win a stage in the Tour de France. And the answer is no, you cannot follow the same plan and expect different and better results. You must train harder. You must train more. You must recover better. You you need to look and optimize for all the little things you can do, and they add up to a lot. And this is the Dave Brailsford, Team Sky marginal gains approach. But doing the same training year after year is a definition of insane, which is doing the same things
and expecting different results.
Right, expecting different results. That's a definition of insane. There must be progression. So how do you train harder and apply a greater stimulus? You can experiment on your own, and I guarantee you'll make your own mistakes. But eventually you'll figure it out and maybe make it work. Or you can hire a coach. You can minimize those mistakes and improve faster. Tap into our experience and knowledge of helping out other athletes achieve successful results, and you can save yourself years of experimentation and making your own mistakes and learning from them and then figuring it out. So what's the famous expression, Ben? It's do, fail, learn. That's kind of like what you're doing, but we as coaches, we've failed, and we've learned, and we're bringing that to you with coaching.
And the sample size as a coach over 20 years times all the coaches you have in the Fascat program, it's a lot of experimentation, failure, and success.
Yes.
And now just pulling the best from that. Whereas if you're doing it by yourself, you've got a sample size of one. So you too can be tricked into better training like Sepp Kuss.
Ride your bike a lot.
Yeah. Next question coming from Orlando Ramirez, who says, I feel so happy. With my second training plan, I just increased my FTP by 14%. Kablamo. Now I've transitioned into morning workouts. I feel great and energized throughout my day. What should I eat before my early morning intense workouts at 4:30 a.m.? Oof.
Yowza.
He gets in early and then heads off to work. So what should you eat? Or I would interject, should you eat?
If
right.
You're
getting after it at 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah, I love the early birds. I call it early bird Watts motivation. That's so early that your pre-workout meal is mostly your dinner the night before. Maybe you'll do a half a banana and water pre-workout, and then you can begin fueling during your morning workout. I just have coffee and water to get started because it's so early that I'm not even that hungry yet. And but because I've done that before, I'm just going to have more carbohydrates in my dinner the night before. And then rather than wait 30 minutes into your ride to begin fueling, I may begin fueling earlier, 5 to 10 minutes in, gel or, a banana. And you can even use carbohydrate drink mix to fuel a banana or even energy food if it's more convenient. And then post-workout, then you move on to breakfast that you can also call it your post-workout recovery meal. And we get asked this question nearly every Ask a Fascat episode. So I will point you and the listeners here now to our 2019 video and answer in the podcast description, and it's titled Effective Fueling for Early Morning Workouts.
Yep, so I'll put that in the podcast description so you can just click that link. Next question from Mr. Paul O'Donnell. With the road season closing down, what do you think of going off the deep end for strength training and doing minimum aerobic maintenance? So pack on lower body and general upper body strength and muscle with a solid periodized 5-day week plan, increase protein, maybe do 2 or 3 aerobic rides a week for maintenance. And then when the race season starts, begin to ramp up in the spring, start wading back into a regular cycling program. What say you, Frank?
Well, this sounds very much like our 10-week weightlifting plan, Paul. I wouldn't call it going off the deep end, though. Rather, good old-fashioned science-based periodization. Lift cycling specific, maintain aerobic work, and then ramp up your base with our 16 weeks of sweet spot plan after you come out of the weight room. And honestly, our 30-week plan is all of that. It combines the two with all the proper rest weeks and builds. And I wouldn't go too far down the rabbit hole with too much strength training because remember, you're a cyclist, you're not a weightlifter. While weightlifting is great, too much will take away from your aerobic endurance and consequently performance. That's it in a nutshell.
Samuel Tobias asks this. How does a person recover from multiple failed FTP tests over the course of a full cycling season? I'm failing to hit even a modest FTP, or sometimes I'm not even able to complete a 20-minute test.
Yeah, so there's really no such thing as a failed FTP test as long as you give it your best and you don't quit. You're likely setting expectations for a desired outcome and a number that you've gotten in your head that you want to hit, when really a proper FTP test is simply going as hard as you can, gritting it out, not quitting, and then analyzing your data afterwards. It's just, if you're going into the test saying I'm going to do 275 and your previous best is 245, that's a 30-watt jump, and that may be unrealistic. And you can't just will yourself into hitting 275. I mean, you got what you got. And, use your recent threshold workouts as a guide. We give athletes a tester 2x10-minute workout to complete in the week leading up to the field test. It serves two parts. It's for training, and then it's for analytical prediction of what they can achieve and how to pace that effort properly. So the number one key is to give it your best effort, not quit. And even if that means starting off at 275 and then after 15 minutes, you just can't hold that any longer. And if you have to back down to 260, we'll keep going. The whole point of it is 20 minutes, your best 20 minutes. And then we can analyze that, and then we'll get a great number out of that for your FTP test. But the biggest thing is, as long as you don't quit, you'll get an accurate, most up-to-date threshold determination. And it also will help you in racing. Sorry, you can't quit when you're 5 minutes from the top of the hill. You got to keep going. So it's good mental training.
Absolutely. Logan McFall asked this. He says, I've been using a Garmin 255 recently and noticed there is a cautionary on the high side of HRV status, in addition to those on the low side of HRV traditionally associated with overreach, fatigue, stress, poor sleep, etc. So my question is this: can HRV be used to score your adaptive response during different parts of a training plan? For example, does a higher than baseline HRV during the off-season mean something different than it will during sweet spot training, or lower than average falling races, high-intensity specialization phases? So how much can you read into HRV score?
I think that's a stretch, Logan. I think the best way to measure the adaptive response during different parts of the training plan is with your performance. And we like that in WATTS, watts. Your race performance as measured by your power output. Power output is measured by field testing and or your training data. I've never used HRV to measure performance. I think HRV is great at detecting trends day to day. Be careful because it's important to use the raw data and the science to detect the signal from the noise. HRV status, in quotes, it should be measured from your HRV baseline, like a rolling 7-day average. Don't get too far down in the weeds if you have one poor score, like what's reported maybe in some of these devices. But I think once you have your HRV baseline, then you can use your HRV for daily advice to answer your question, or the question: are you above your baseline or are you below your baseline? And then look for big picture trends at how your baseline is trending over time, not in days, but in months and quarters and years. And that's what we look at. Like with the Human Powered Health women's team, that's what I look at with Phil. Is this HRV trending up? Or is it trending down? But one day is not going to break the bank.
Similarly, trying to read the tea leaves or somebody else reading the tea leaves, Eli Criffield asks this: how can Coach Jake tell that I'm fatigued and need a rest before I can? What data is it that shows it might be time for an unscheduled rest? Is he spying on me somehow? What's his secret methodology?
Great question, Eli. Honestly, the secret methodology is good old-fashioned training plan design. Jake designs the plan to push you and challenge you, but not break you. Jake wants to make you tired, but not more tired than you can recover from. And, Jake's got 15 years of coaching experience and the history of working with you and knowing what you can handle. For example, Jake has coached you for 2 years. He's got a pretty good feel for what you can do, and he knows what you can handle because he's been analyzing your power data for 2 years, and he's been talking with you regularly. So good coaches like Jake and all the Fascats, intuitively, we feel and we understand what the athlete can and can't do. And we prescribe a dose of training by duration of the workouts, total hours per week, similarly total TSS per week. And then there's also the difficulty of the workout, that go into the planning. Obviously Tabatas for 1 hour with a much different feeling than, like a sweet spot ride. And so that's step one. And then step two is to monitor your training data as you go along. And then step three is to couple your training data plus what you're reporting back, how you're feeling, and cross-referencing that back to your training plan. That's what we do every day when we analyze your power. That's a triangulation of your training plan, your feedback, and what the data is saying about that. Now, the fourth and next level is combining that power data with your wearable data, your sleep and your HRV. That's the optimized algorithm, and that'll answer, are you doing too much Are you doing too little? Or are you just right, optimized? It helps you and Jake manage your stress to recovery balance. So once Coach Jake factors those 4 things in, he may revise your training plan for additional rest because your body, by way of your data, is saying it's time to rest. Now, oftentimes, a good training plan pushes you and then magically has a rest week designed in.
Hallelujah.
A lot of athletes on Saturdays and Sundays, they'll be like, Coach, I'm so tired. And the light at the end of the tunnel is Sunday after that workout because they got a rest week. And we're like, come on, dig in. You can do it. Follow the plan. And they're like, okay. And then they do it. And it's great. But I think without that rest week designed in, it's at that point Optimize may say, nope, you're good to keep training. It'll validate, what the training plan has been described as. And you don't need a rest week because maybe you haven't been applying enough training load and you're not tired. And if you're not tired, keep going. That's the whole thing about periodization. Conversely, it may support the training plan design and say, yep, you're in need of a rest week. And then the third scenario, to answer your question, it'll say, nope, the training plan's too aggressive. Your body's not covering as well as we thought. We're going to listen to the data. The training plan and your recovery don't jive. So now it's time to revise the training plan.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Next one, John Gray asks, how accurate is the calories burned feature on my Wahoo cycling computer? I wear a heart rate strap and use a power meter, and I want to work on body composition this fall. Should I be cutting back the calories burnt? Should I be cutting back calories based on what my computer is saying, or how should I judge my calorie intake?
Yeah. So you mentioned you have a power meter. Use your kilojoules. 1 kilojoule equals roughly 1 calorie of food. There's a complicated conversion thing, but that's the way it works out mathematically. So if you do 1,000 kilojoule ride, that's like 1 Chipotle burrito. I mean, that's a great way to just understand it. So don't use the calories, that are estimated by your bike computer. Use your kilojoules. And we have a great training tip on our website. It's called Using Your Power Meter for Weight Loss. It's on our website, usingyourpowermeterforweightloss.com. And then you can also, if you want to lose weight and you want to do it scientifically through the workload that you're doing by using your power meter data, check out our weight loss meal plan. And if you want to just be told what to eat and when with the detailed day-by-day instructions, delicious recipes, based on your activity level, your gender, and your current body weight. These recipes have already counted the calories, so all you have to do is FTFP the meal plan.
Chris Derry asked this. I'm looking for suggestions on how to deal with the after a event blues. This seems to happen to me every year. I pick my events for the upcoming year around December, then start training and working with my coach toward those goals with a focus on the A event. I try to pick something that I really want to do and look forward to. After months of training completing the big day, I have a day or two of afterglow and leftover adrenaline, but by the next training session, I'm just going through the motions. This can last a couple of weeks, sometimes longer. Is this common to other athletes? And if so, how do you deal with this feeling?
It's so common, Chris. I know that you're out there in this bubble and you may think that you're unique in this, but this happens to all athletes. I mean, even the guys that do the Tour de France, a week after they're like, But the way to combat the post-A event blues is take a break and take a 2-week postseason break with no bike right after your A event race, unless you have something else going on, but that's a different answer. Get your mojo back when you take that break and then choose your goals for 2023. Build your ATP. This is what was that 2 weeks ago? We talked about the ATP podcast. And then because you got your mojo back, then you just execute with motivation towards those goals. And, since you're coached by Coach Allie, we reached out to her and she says, make it fun. Don't kill yourself to beat the old goal. And Ben, do you want to read what she said?
Sure. She said, if you're racing the same race as your A race year after year, I'd consider making a new A race goal. It's easy to keep the same A race because you know what to expect. There is growth in a new challenge and the unexpected. So you can do a lot of research on a course to get an idea of what to expect and then go push yourself. Coach Allie also says, I think it's important that when you have a goal race that you do everything possible to stick to your training plan so you're totally prepared. This includes nutrition and hydration. Be totally prepared. Sometimes the post-race blues happen when we go to an A race and we don't do our best and we slacked on fueling or we let something slip. So this is one of the many reasons it's important to be super dialed in. If you've made it your A race and you've committed to it as an important thing, then act like it.
Do it right. Go all in. I think her advice is phenomenally good, that is. I was just talking with Coach Isaiah earlier in the week. He was having a conversation with an athlete he coached who's done Leadville 3-4 times in a row, and Coach Isaiah has talked him into doing Unbound. To mix it up.
Switch it up.
Little diversity. Yeah.
Yeah, it's along those same lines. We've been talking about putting together a menu of sorts for you to be dreaming about in the fall and winter coming up. Of yes, what are some cool events out there that you have not done? So
little teaser there.
Yeah. So,
the Fascat Field Guide to 2023 events.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Coming soon to podcast near you. Nick Lisinski asks this. For people like myself who sometimes have to work really long hours and can only get in a 30 to 45 minute workout on some days, what is the optimal way to maintain CTL, or at least minimize CTL loss?
Sweet spot, but of course. Also remember that sometimes in the annual training paradigm, you want your CTL to go down, like now in the off season. That's right, go down. Periodize your training, take appropriate breaks, rest cycles, achieve the right timing. Don't get greedy and try to hold the same level of CTL all year round. A good CTL should be moving up or down or a lot. And sometimes when a new athlete comes to us and we do a historical data review of their PMC chart, we see it's been steady between, like, say, for example, 60 and 70 all year round. And this is fairly common for the self-coached athlete. And it's absolutely uncommon for the coached athlete because we have them take breaks, we have them do builds, so forth. And so what you really want your PMC chart to look like is in the 30s and 40s in the fall, rise to maybe 60s in the midwinter, then peak out in the mid 70s or even the 80s by the spring season. And then you'll level out in the competition phase and maybe even decrease your training load in order to peak. Yes, decrease. So sweet spot when you're trying to hang on to that hard-earned CTL, but don't do it year round. And remember, sweet spot is the best bang for your buck. If you got 30, 45 minutes, don't even muck with the warm up and the cool down. Just get on the bike, start jamming it out, get off, go on with your day. But I will take your question one step further because I'm a coach and we care and we may see a pattern here is why do you have to work these really long hours? You're probably asking yourself that. Why am I working so much? But how long? The answer could lie in time management and strategically designing a training plan around that. 1 hour a day accomplishes a lot, and 1 hour a day is only roughly 4% of the total hours in the day. I mean, then you add in 8 hours for sleep and say you're working 12 hours a day. Well, time management, that leaves 4 hours, and, maybe you have kids and, you can't ride 4 hours. It doesn't really quite work that way. But, time management is, all fair game with what we do as coaches. Sweet spot.
Fraz Johns asked this. When peaking for a hill climb event here in the UK, when should you start to care about losing a couple of pounds of weight given the importance of watts per kilo in these events? I'm conscious it shouldn't be an extreme change and nutrition is important all year round, but for me it's all about balancing having energy throughout the final training rides and, dropping to a slightly lower but safe weight.
Winning in the kitchen should be 24/7, 365 endeavor. Remember, what would Alaphilippe do?
WWAD.
He wins in the kitchen year round. He's probably been winning in the kitchen for the past 10 years. I mean, losing weight when you're training hard is not advisable. So lose weight when your training isn't hard. So that's like now through early midwinter. And then once you start doing a lot of hours, once you start doing intervals and racing, don't be dieting. Don't be trying to lose weight. Eat up. I mean, carbohydrates help you recover. And so for most Northern Hemisphere athletes, that's, like I said, between now and February. I mean, we've said this many, many times here before. Trying to lose weight while you're training hard is a lose-lose proposition. Sometimes, or something will give, and oftentimes it's your power output and your recovery. And your performance will decline. Don't do it. Be a good boy and girl and work on your body comp now in the off season to reach your weight goal before the intervals and the racing begin next year.
Easy to say, a little bit harder to do, but
Totally.
FTFP.
Yes.
Francis McKenna asked this question about juniors. How much structured workouts should juniors be doing? Our concern as parents is that our son is overly consumed with structured hours on the bike and might be doing too much at the age of 14. His weekly totals are in the 10 to 12 hours plus a bunch of unstructured rides.
10 to 12 hours is quite a bit for a 14-year-old, but I think if he's having fun, it's fine. I mean, he certainly can recover from that amount of training, unlike us Masters Joes. I do think there's a balance between structured workouts and unstructured rides. We'd want to see the training plan plan and or his training log. Plus, if he's riding with friends or with his junior club outside, that's totally fine and good, probably preferable. But if he's following structured workouts indoors by himself 4 to 5 days a week, that's too much. That's not going to last. Get him outside. Get him with a junior club for group training. And then I think 10 to 12 hours is totally fine and normal. But I mean, in these days of Zwift and Trainer Road, if you're by yourself doing all that structured training, 10 to 12 is too much.
Next question from Sundance. This is the only name we have here.
Hey, Sundance.
My job has me out of town 3 to 4 days a week, nearly every week of the year. Doing 5 workouts is often not feasible for me. So if I have 3 days to train, which workouts are the most important? In the sweet spot plan, would it be the first hour-long workout with sweet spot intervals and then 2 longer weekend rides? I'd imagine that I'm not the only Fascat on here that doesn't have the typical work schedule.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of first responders, doctors, nurses, firefighters, even airline pilots have this schedule, so we have experience with it. We even had one State Department athlete who couldn't leave the embassy and faced the similar schedule. The answer really depends on the time of the year and in the relation to the time of the year to your goal, plus the amount of time you do have to train on those 3 days. I mean, if you have 5 hours a day, like if they're your days off, I mean, you could do a 15-hour week with 3 5-hour rides. I mean, you'll crush it that way. You want to periodize your training, though, in the off season with like a weights phase, and you want to still do a base phase and an interval phase and so forth. It might take a slightly creative approach, that we could help. Obviously, a plug for our one-on-one coaching, because we do have experience helping with that. But you mentioned your sweet spot plan and the long rides on the weekends. By all means, yes, do that. Long rides will trump. You want to focus on volume, and then there's probably one pretty stout sweet spot workout per week. Do that as well as like the third day, and just try to ride as much as possible within the 3 days. And then if you get good and tired from those 3 days, you can use the other 4 days to strategically recover, and you'll come back fresher when you resume the next week's training.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, Frank and listeners, you ready for some short intervals, some Tabatas? We're gonna throw
speed round.
Quick ones at you. Quick questions, quick answers. Frank, how can you best improve with a limited schedule? I need a magic wand.
Build as big of a base as you can with sweet spot training, but then move on and do intervals. An hour a day consistently for 6 to 12 months or longer yields impressive results. Maybe 5 to 10% improvement or more.
How do I balance fitness training with skills for gravel and mountain bike riding?
2 Hrvs. Ride your gravel and mountain bike over technical terrain while you train, and practice riding over that technical terrain.
2 Hrv.
Yes. Don't ride your road bike.
That's called underbiking. Different type of training. Are wearables worth it?
Yes.
Should you skip a session if you feel good, but your wearable is telling you to rest?
It depends. I think feeling good trumps any wearable data, and I think the app should help you make an informed decision to what that training should be. Choose an easier workout or take a full-on rest day. They're 2 completely different things. So make the data work for you. Don't make it more complicated. Use the signal, the raw data, instead of the noise to tap into the science of what the data is telling you. One night of poor sleep or low Hrv does not warrant you change your training for the day. Consecutive nights of poor sleep and low Hrv readings, and you got a problem. You need to make some changes to the training plan probably, and your lifestyle.
How do you think about progression in multiple years as a master's athlete? And at what point do age-related declines begin to outweigh potential performance improvements?
Progression in multiple years begins with consistency, training year-round, building each year upon the last. Build for 5 years or more like that, like Sep did, and you can achieve massive results. Consistency and progression includes sticking with your coaching year-round without stopping and starting and being a year-round athlete.
Should triathletes dabble in gravel?
No, triathletes should fully embrace gravel. Yeah, you'll probably find that your diesel engine will serve you really well, and that your handling and pack riding skills will improve, and you'll probably have a heck of a lot of fun. So come on and join us.
Absolutely. The water's fine. Come on in.
Yes.
How crucial of a role does nutrition play when it comes to improvement and recovery?
It's huge. It's huge. Eat smart and get faster. Win in the kitchen. Learn how to with our intro winning in the kitchen meal plan, and then graduate on to our weight loss meal plan. I have hundreds of stories of athletes who have really dove into their nutrition and made huge leaps and bounds the following year.
What's the best approach to maintain bike fitness when you travel and don't have access to a bike but do have access to a gym?
Hit that gym bike. It's better than no no bike. And you go off of RPE, maybe bring your heart rate monitor strap, but riding a bike is pedaling, whether it's, your Gucci Pinarello or your triangle seat gym bike. And, the other thing, look for other aerobic activities such as running, which I'm going to get into trouble for mentioning, swim if you can swim, anything aerobic. I mean, and not only that, there's a bevy of strength and conditioning exercises you may do, even yoga routines that you can do in your hotel room. For the cyclocrossers right now that have to travel, I have them run upstairs and take the elevator down, do their cyclocross run workouts in the hotel stairway.
Coach Susie's got some body weight strength and conditioning exercises videos on our YouTube right now. So those are things you can do anywhere with little to no equipment. Certainly something you can do in a hotel.
There's always something you can do each day.
What's your guidance on training volume indoors on an erg trainer versus outdoors to achieve similar training load and results? For example, does longer duration outdoors, should you factor in longer duration outdoors due to coasting and other, quote, micro breaks?
Volume is volume, and the results come to those who do the work. And do you want to do 30% less work and possibly get 30% less results? TSS and work is the same indoors or outdoors. Now, what you're mentioning, and that because that was some tough love right there, because there's no shortcuts in cycling. Sorry. But outdoors, here's where this question comes from. Outdoors, when you coast, you're not pedaling. Indoors, there's no such thing as coasting because you're constantly pedaling. So over the years, we've said you can do 30% less, but that's more just for mental sanity and sustainability. But if you really want to do the work, do the work.
I cross-train with running and lifting. I struggle to get faster on the bike because my lifting makes me heavier and my running takes a toll on my quads. How do you incorporate other training days into a plan that will make you faster on the bike?
Balance and periodization. Balancing the impact of running and lifting to your bike workouts. The periodization will help you focus on one part of so you could focus on your lifting and your running and then not compromise your biking. And then at other times of a plan, you can focus on your biking at the expense of your weightlifting. You maybe phase that out and or your running. And our new 30-week multi-sport plan helps you balance all that, your running, your lifting, and your biking with a well thought out, scientifically designed plan, and has the appropriate amount of rest days and rest weeks too.
And thus concludes our speed round. Well done, Frank.
Thank you.
You passed.
Thank you.
Had an
We probably could have done that even faster.
Next time I'm going to get a bell. So bing. Or like a little,
time's up.
Sand timer. So now we return to our regularly scheduled programming, the slightly longer questions. And again, we are awarding a Forerunner 955 to the best question of the bunch. And we'll name that at the end. This question comes from Andrew in New Zealand, who says, how can an athlete best incorporate the outputs from a smart wearable, like, say, the Garmin Forerunner 955, to modify or tweak their training and training behavior on a day-to-day basis, with a view to both avoid overtraining, but also to maximize training effect? I'm aware of the theory of HRV, for example, but not so much on how to actually use it on a day-to-day basis.
Lovely, Andrew. The data you want to pay attention most to is your sleep and your HRV, both of which are recorded in the aforementioned Forerunner 955 and compatible with our new training platform. We use the raw sleep and HRV data combined with your power data to let you know if you're doing too much, too little, or just right, like Goldilocks. So that its essence gets rid of the potential for overtraining that you mentioned. So when you're optimized, now that maximizes the training effect. So we want to help you manage your training to always be optimized so you can maximize your training. So too much stress to recovery, and then optimize will help you make an informed decision to follow or not follow the training plan for that day. And I know what the listeners are thinking, not FTFPing, what? Sacrilege. But we're developing the optimized data visualization, so you'll be able to make a data-driven decision for what's the best approach to following your training plan on that particular day. I mean, I think we were talking with Eli's question earlier, how Coach Jake may make changes to your training plan. And this is exactly what we're talking, but from a data visualization where you don't have to consult with a coach necessarily. So if you're in the red, you may be informed to perform an easier, lower wattage workout that day. Or if you're pointing to the left, left not doing enough, you'll have the tools to decide to ride longer or harder that particular day. So your sleep combined with your HRV and your activity data, your power and or your heart rate, it helps you paint a 24/7, 365 representation of your training to stress recovery balance. Too much, too little, or just right, optimized. Now, our algorithm does not use a single daily HRV input because, as we've said earlier in this podcast, one poor HRV reading does not impede your ability to perform and or follow your training plan that day. Consistently low HRV readings does impede your ability to perform and or follow your training plan that day. Now, similarly with sleep, one poor night is not going to ruin you. We've seen this time and time again with other apps that indicate users are in the red and they go on to have great races and be able to do great workouts. The psychology of this is awful, and we're fixing that. I mean, I think we even mentioned that with Phil Gaiman's Mount Washington data. I mean, he was not in the green on race morning and crushed it. So our proprietary sleep algorithm uses the data so that as long as you're sleeping consistently well, one poor night the night before a race does not penalize you. Several consecutive nights of poor sleep will. Sleep is additive, and little bit by little bit, poor sleep will bite you in the butt and affect your stress recovery balance. Now, conversely, if you get great sleep night after night, it will reward you. It will become your superpower, and it will help you maintain a higher training load because you're recovering better, and that's what we're aiming to capture as well. So, great question, and I could go on forever. Well, not forever, but much longer than we have time for right now. Let's move on to the next question.
Charlie Simpson asks, how do you recommend dealing with planned vacations? Is it okay to just pause a training plan midway through, or do I need to start over again? I like these real world questions.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the timing of these vacations in relation to your goal. I mean, if they're like 3 weeks before your A event, that's no bueno. 8 to 12 weeks before your A event, and that warrants a revision to your training plan. But if they're further away, like greater than 16 weeks, you may be fine with just a pause and then a resumption. I mean, the best answer really depends on your goals and what you're trying to accomplish with your training. I mean, if you're just trying to beat your friends on a group ride, a pause is perfectly fine. But if you have like a time goal for like Unbound or Leadville, you may be hard pressed to devise another approach to your training plan post vacation. Now, I would be remiss not to mention the best vacations come after your A events. I mean, they say all cyclists get married in the fall because it's after the season. There's a reason for that. And but an example, like time your vacation so maybe that it's in the fall after your A event. No. Like the summertime is when most families take vacation, so that's unrealistic. But this is a great reason to choose an early season A race goal, like a BWR, a Mid-South, any of the legendary races that occur over Memorial Day, Unbound, because guess what? You be a good boy and girl and you train really hard for that. You go to your A race, you deal with those post A event blues like Chris was mentioning, and you go on vacation. Then you come back and you beat your friends on the group ride all summer. It's like, it's great. So timing of your vacation, you may not be able to select the time of your vacation because there's other people in your family involved, but you can certainly time your A events by choice.
Daniel Kessler asks, what do you think about low cadence workouts, and when should we do them? Increasingly, I find myself riding gravel to get away from cars and just enjoy cycling again with no eye on the numbers and forgetting about the weird obsessions we roadies seem to have.
Yeah.
On gravel, I end up doing more low cadence grinding. Now, is it my imagination, or is this building strength that I can then apply when using a higher cadence?
We love to prescribe muscle tension intervals, especially now in the off season, and particularly the fall. To us, they're big gear, low cadence mashers. It's like lifting weights on the bike. Cadence should be between 40 and 60 RPMs and may be done against a lot of resistance on a trainer or up a shallow grade 2 to 4% incline hill. You mentioned you're riding on gravel, and it's really important. Maybe that gravel has you down around 70s or high 60s. Do the actual work. Put yourself up against so much resistance that you're between 40 and 60. 50 if you got to choose something precise. And these are also muscle tension intervals. They're not a power or heart rate based workout. They're a muscular one. And you want to really try to engage your glutes while you pedal 360 degree torqued pedal stroke. So you like squeeze your butt and try to use your butt when you're doing these intervals. It's really advantageous to do up a shallow grade hill or on the trainer. You can really concentrate on it, and you almost like you can look at this in a cadence analysis and torque analysis in the power data. Also, Coach Isaiah is a big fan of muscle tension intervals too, and he wrote a great training tip, and Ben will put those in the link on fastcatcoaching.com.
Robin Park asks what he should be doing for training. It's funny that we get these training questions here at Fascat.
Yeah.
Robin says, I'm coming back from stomach cancer to race 50-plus criteriums.
Wow.
Is it appropriate for a master's athlete preparing for short 1-hour criteriums to be including a lot of sweet spot training in their winter training plan? Or should I instead be focusing more on short intervals to try to bring my sprint power back up?
Most definitely, Robin. Even criterium racing is an aerobic event that rewards a well-developed aerobic system. And to be good aerobically, you want to build a big base. And the best way to build a big base is with sweet spot training if you're on a limited training time. So periodize your training, though, because you don't want to just do all sweet spot at the expense of the anaerobic criterium training. So you build your base sweet spot style preseason, and then when you get closer to your season, you switch from base to race and you do the short high intensity criterium specific intervals you mentioned. Now this would be like following our 16-week of sweet spot plan to build a big base, and then switching to our 6-week criterium training plan to get specific. And as I mentioned, a 6-week criterium plan, the image of the rider on the plan is none other than Ben, because he followed that training plan and he won the City Park Criterium. What year was that? Like 2000?
1946, I think it was.
It was like 2018.
Yeah, a few years ago.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Yeah, that was a good one. It had Eddie Gregas on his wheel, former U.S. Pro National Criterium champion.
Yeah, I won't lie. I saved that photo.
We did too.
Liam asked this. Can HRV, and more specifically Optimize, recognize the difference between illness, overreaching, or under-recovering? They're all very similar, of course, but sometimes you can complete some training and sometimes not.
Yeah, Liam. I mean, HRV is a good indicator of impending illness, oftentimes decreasing the day before symptoms come on. Optimize is not meant to be an indicator of illness. I mean, Optimize will definitely prevent you from overtraining. To get to a chronic state of being overtrained, you have to go past the point of overreaching. And overreaching is a fine line, and that's what we hope to help you decipher, to tell you when you need to back off your training because your stress to recovery balance is too much and it exceeds the amount of recovery you're getting. Yeah,
like you have to stress your system in order to get better. That's what training is, right? So some stress, good. Too much stress,
bad.
Barry Fletcher asks, how does one go from being a level 3 certified USAC coach to a coach for Fascat?
Yeah, Barry. Well, all the Fascat coaches are required to have been former professional level bike riders or currently be one. Then they bring at least 2 years of coaching experience with athletes and delivering performance and results to the athletes they coach. We've outlined what it takes to be a Fascat coach in our mission statement and our core values, which we have posted online. Just go to the About tab and look at our values. And additionally, we have podcasted about what makes a good coach. I believe that was the March 2021 episode that you can go back and listen. And that's what makes a good coach, in our opinion.
Yeah, I'll put that link in the description. Jan Marshall asks, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name, if you're a Yan or a
Jan.
You're Jan. Garmin uses EPOC, E-P-O-C, with the first beat algorithm to measure training stress. In their white paper, they claim this algorithm also considers factors of difficulty. For example, doing a couple of sprints and then immediately doing a 20-minute threshold effort would give a higher EPOC score than doing a threshold effort and then doing those sprints. I don't see any elite athletes using Garmin's training load instead of CTL. In my experience, when I followed a CTL-based plan, Garmin indicated I was overreaching many times. I felt more tired overall, but my power went up faster. What are your thoughts on this?
So if your power went up faster, I would go with whatever you're doing on that methodology. The other thing is, these devices, oftentimes they add in features without a lot of support. And I don't want to maybe the precise application is great, but in your case, it sounds like it wasn't. I mean, Garmin's first beat algorithm uses heart rate to calculate the scores you're receiving. We use power to calculate calculate a training stress score and to give a more direct measurement of the work that is being done. And then that goes into calculating your training stress, your training load. And so we know that power is a more superior method of calculating training load than heart rate. So I think you have your answer right there. Heart rate based activities like running and multi-sport and swimming and ultra and Nordic skiing, they're all heart rate based. There's no really power there. So maybe that's where the first speed algorithm is coming from. It's a broader application for more users. One of the things that we're doing with OTS, so we're developing a more innovative way of measuring training stress. So you got your power OTS from your power meter, but what about heart rate? So there's heart rate OTS. And really, we like TRIMPS, Training Impulse Score. It was developed by Dr. Eric Bannister in 1976. The TRIMP model was scientifically proven. It works. And we believe HR OTS will be a superior method for quantifying training stress and therefore training load. So look for that in the coming months, and good luck with your training and raising your power output and performance. I mean, measure, that's what you're really measuring.
Yeah, sounds like you got results. That's what you're after. Mm-hmm. Orlando says, I am 45 years old and have been, quote, training on my own for 12 years. I don't have a specific training program. I just go out and go hard, hoping that I can be better. I've improved in my group rides and events. I enrolled on the 30 weeks of off-season of weight training, and I've discovered the dark side of the moon. I can feel myself getting faster.
I love it. I love it.
Thank you for your amazing program. Question is this. Can I train year-round to do once a week short Zwift races and group rides on the weekends? I don't have a specific I don't have a specific event through the year. I just want to be fit and faster on the bike.
Welcome to the dark side, or her cheetah spot side. With regards to Zwift, I don't see why not. I mean, it's fun. You're having fun. You're progressing. Go for it. You can use your Zwift races to substitute over top the hard group rides we prescribe in your training plan on Saturdays. I mean, these group rides fall during the 16-week sweet spot build of your 30-week plan. Still FTFP, your prescribed workout duration, and get in the volume after your race, adhering to the duration prescribed, usually 3 to 4 hours. And one thing, avoid the Zwift races during the hypertrophy phase of your weightlifting phase because your legs are just going to feel like wood. During the fall foundation and strength and power phases, Zwifting is fine. I would place less emphasis on your results during these phases. And then, honestly, I would maybe graduate down and do a Zwift group ride, not a race during this time. Remember, Zwift's got a lot of training options. There's a lot of things you can do that aren't full gas racing. And then later on in our sweet spot build, a Zwift race is a wonderful training tool and technique. The only caveat is that it's racing, which in Zwift speak means you go flat out from the gun until you get dropped, and then you keep going. I mean, it's extremely similar to a cyclocross race. And the only problem is that in your plan, we're prescribing sweet spot TSS rides, which means you're not to go harder than your sweet spot. So it's literally zones 2 through sweet spot, which is the top end is about 97%, just below your threshold. We're not talking zone 5, zone 6, which is going to happen if you get really competitive with the Zwift racing. So back up, slow it down, and this is where a great Zwift group ride can really come in handy. You can use your watts per kilogram and to choose like a Zwift, B, C, or D, even E races. And so we call this technique sweet spot group ride. TSS rides. Coach Jake has a wonderful podcast and a video and a training tip of himself using Zwift to FTFP his 200 TSS on his training plan. You can find it. It's Sweet Spot TSS Rides Indoors. We even podcasted about it. And welcome to the dark side. Have fun out there and use Zwift to its fullest capacity.
Clayton asks, I ride road, mountain, and gravel. I have an Asioma Duo power meter on my road bike and a Stages crank on my gravel bike, but I haven't figured out what to do with the mountain bike. Question is this: will adding another crank-based power meter to the mix be worth it, or just degrade my power meter data integrity with more variability? Also, how will mixing in heart rate TSS for off-road rides and power-based TSS from the road rides affect my CTL? What discrepancies can this cause?
Whew, OMG. This brings up my data integrity rant.
Don't get the guy started.
This is why we have gray hair. We as coaches, let me just give you some background on that first. So we see a broad range of inaccuracies between power meter brands, and I advise athletes to use the same brand power meter across all bikes, road road bike, gravel bike, mountain bike, to establish more consistency in your data. So I would recommend you use all stages or all ICO, one or the other, but not both. And this is where the data discrepancy gray hair thing comes in, because one power meter may read low and the other may read high, and we don't know which one is which. And so I've had athletes that have had one power meter on their TT bike, and we knew that data they had an FTP of one number, and then they had another brand power meter on their road bike, and we had another FTP for that bike, but they didn't test on the same day. What if it was really just a difference in their FTP? And then, trying to make sense of that and changing FTPs back and forth, I mean, it got out of hand real quick. And in the end, really, it comes down to the fact that if you can't trust your data, should you really be making decisions from it? And the answer is probably not. And so this is where we say garbage in, garbage out. And, if you put garbage in, then you're not going to be able to make good decisions out. And that's what you're doing with your data. As far as like being able to try to keep up with like CTL, HRTSS does a pretty good job, but it does introduce variance. It's not the most things, and, try to avoid if possible. It's nice to assign, you can use heart rate TSS to assign a value for a non-power meter bike, and it helps you keep your PMC chart up to date. I wouldn't introduce that data 4 to 6 weeks prior to your A event when the integrity really matters, but in the off season, it's fine. And then also know that, CTL has a half-life of 42 days, so it really doesn't matter after 42 days anyway. And yeah, that's, without ranting, that's the end of my answer.
So when possible, just stick with one brand of power meter.
Yeah, standardization of power meter equipment.
Final question. And then we will pick a winner, chicken dinner, or Garmin Forerunner.
Yeah.
This comes from John P. Zanny, who says, I'm a big podcast listener and also advocate of the benefits of Sweet Spot. My question is about the switch from base to race and the fact that Sweet Spot is very race specific for many long gravel event competitors. However, I have never really heard much discussion about this aspect, as usually it is the higher intensity stuff that gets the most attention during race preparation.
That's right, John. Sweet Spot is specific to your longer gravel events, fondos, Sweet Spot mountain bike marathon events. That's why we have a Sweet Spot marathon mountain bike plan. It uses these long Sweet Spot rides to be ultra specific to the power demands of these events. And these simulation rides in particular ask you to Sweet Spot in order to achieve various TSSs and workloads. And we even have you go to exhaustion during these rides with Sweet Spot. And then we ask you to keep going because this is exactly what happens in races. You get exhausted, you're only 3/4 of the way finished, and you have to keep going. And that's the training, the mental keeping going. And it sucks making 200 watts when your FTP is 325. But guess what? That's what happens to everyone. I mean, if you look at Ian Boswell's Unbound Gravel power file, when we podcasted with him, a couple days after he won last year, I mean, he was only making like 200 watts. And, Pete Stenham, less than 200 watts. And it's, you keep going. So anyway, as it relates to the switching from base to race, so what you actually do is you switch from base to race and begin doing these simulation rides. And that's what you'll find in our gravel plan and our Sweet Spot marathon mountain bike plan. So rather than switching from base to race, you're switching from base to simulation. Now, that doesn't quite roll off the tongue as well as base to race, but you get the point. Great question.
And that, my friends, is Ask a Fascat number 22.
Woohoo!
We thank you so much for your questions. It is an honor and a privilege that you trust us with these questions, and we enjoy answering them. If you did not hear your question, fear not. We are logging and storing these away, and we'll be rolling them out in future podcasts. So thank you, and keep them coming.
And with that, I'll put you on the spot, Ben. What do you think your most thoughtful question was?
I didn't have any thoughtful questions, but our listeners had a lot. I think there's like 2 categories of them, right? And one category was, how do I best train when life happens, right? Whether it's work schedule or kid schedule, et cetera, et cetera. So I appreciate those, and just makes us understand we're all in the same boat together. Sometimes different parts of the boat, different points of life.
Yeah.
That was one good theme, yeah. But then the other theme was like, what to do with the data, whether it's different power meters or more to the timely point, HRV. Okay, are wearables worth it? What about wearables is worth it? And that's where, Frank, your work is like on the cutting edge of answering that. So I think that's where I would net out, because that's what so many of us are curious about. It's like, okay, we've got this data in front of us. Now what?
Yeah. What do we do with it? What does it tell us? What's the actionable insight?
Yes. Yeah. What's the takeaway? Just much in the way like when many of us got our power meter for the first time many moons ago.
Oh my gosh.
There was a lot of numbers there.
Yeah.
But what do you do with those numbers?
Yeah. I mean, the graph was just all up and down. You had no idea what you were looking at. One question we didn't get is which is better, Whoop or Aura? And maybe that's because we were giving away a Garmin 955. So, but speaking of which, next week we're talking with Des Yap. He's Colorado's own fitness and tech reviewer. He's kind of like a DC rainmaker, and he's coming on the podcast next week, coming into the studio. And I, for one, am really looking forward to speaking with him about PPGs and photodiodes and body sensor placement. Des knows all about Apple Watches and sleep and HRV data. He's reviewed the Garmin and the Whoop and Aura at length. You can check out his YouTube channel, Des Fit, to brush up on your sports tech before you listen to our pod.
Yeah, so Des was just out in California for the the Apple's presentation of all the latest and greatest, and his YouTube channel, DesFit, DESFIT, is all about wearables. So big old brain for us to pick next week on the podcast.
Should be a good one. But we still haven't picked a winner. I think the most thoughtful question, and this is a little self-serving, and you might have detected it from my answer because I gave like the longest one and I probably got the most animated, was the athlete from New Zealand who asked about how to use his HRV, and that was Andrew. And I'm just going to make the call. I think, Andrew, congratulations. You are the winner. Most thoughtful question. We'll reach out to us. I don't know if we have your email. Reach out to us, please, and we will get that shipped overseas for you. Brings me back to my days of shipping power meters worldwide. DHL. Yes, that was the way to go. We have one final thing.
Yeah, just one little last announcement on the HRV things. We're not the only ones thinking certainly about HRV, and you are not the only ones asking about HRV. And recently some research just came out from the University of Queensland, which published a validation of 6 wearable devices for estimating sleep, heart rate, and heart rate variability in healthy adults. This research was funded by AIS, the Australian Institute of Sport, not the wearable companies, which is notable. It's not a cigarette company funding research on cigarettes.
What makes cigarettes good for you? Oh
right.
My God. Yeah. This group looked at Whoop, Aura, Garmin, Apple Watch, and others. So it's best we didn't try to answer this question because these researchers, they put their life's work towards this with a lot of time, money, and effort. And the paper we will decipher and let you know in the future. But they'll get at the root of what's best and what's the best data integrity.
Yeah. So we'll post a link to that study in the podcast description, and then we will be taking some of the questions that we have from that to our man Des next week. But now we will leave it there for you folks. We appreciate you listening to our podcast, being part of the Fascat community, making this all work.
Yes, thank you so much for your questions. And Andrew, congratulations on winning. And with that, we'll leave it to you to remember to work hard, ride fast, have fun, and as always,
FTFP.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.